They didn't lose their childhood in one moment. They slowly stepped out of it. One day they were playing, and the next day they were paying attention, watching moods, reading silence, learning when to speak and when to disappear. No one announced it, no one warned them. They were just told, "You're mature for your age," and somehow that sentence followed them for the rest of their life. This isn't the story of a strong child. This is the psychology of a child who had no choice but to grow up too fast. Some children grow up fast because of chaos, some because of neglect, some because they had to take care of siblings, some because no one took care of them at all. Psychology calls this premature maturity or parentification. It happens when a child is pushed into adult emotional or practical roles before their brain and nervous system are ready. They don't just learn responsibility, they learn survival. And when survival is on the line, the brain adapts in powerful ways. The mind of a child who grows up too fast organizes itself around one central question: what do I need to do to keep everything from falling apart? From this question, patterns are formed that last decades. The first is hyper-responsibility. They feel responsible for everything: other people's emotions, other people's problems, other people's stability. As a child, they learned that if they didn't handle it, no one would. As an adult, this becomes an inability to rest. They can't relax unless everyone else is okay. Peace feels earned, not given. The second pattern is emotional suppression. These children don't learn how to feel safely. They learn how to manage situations. Crying didn't help. Anger made things worse. Needs were ignored or punished. So emotions were pushed down, not processed. They became calm during emergencies, steady during chaos, reliable when things went wrong. But when life is quiet, when nothing needs fixing, their body doesn't know what to do. Calm feels unfamiliar, sometimes even unsafe. The third pattern is accelerated thinking with delayed feeling. These children sound wise beyond their years. They understand complexity early. They give advice that feels grounded and thoughtful, but emotionally, part of them is frozen at the age when they had to stop being a child. That's why they can be highly functional, but deeply confused by their own feelings. They may feel ashamed for wanting comfort, guilty for needing reassurance, or overwhelmed by emotions they were never taught how to handle. As they grow older, their identity forms around usefulness. Not joy, not curiosity, not play. Usefulness. They were valued for what they could handle, not for who they were. Somewhere along the way, they internalized a belief that says, if I am useful, I am safe. If I am needed, I matter. This belief doesn't disappear with age. It shows up in adulthood as overworking, overgiving, and an inability to rest without guilt. The nervous system doesn't recognize peace as safety. It recognizes productivity and control as safety. In relationships, the psychology becomes even more visible. They are often drawn to people who need fixing, saving, or emotional labor. They give deeply but struggle to receive. Asking for help feels uncomfortable, sometimes even shameful. Depending on someone else feels risky, because in childhood, dependence wasn't safe. So they say, I'm fine, even when they're exhausted. And when someone truly shows up for them, their body doesn't relax. It becomes alert. Because care is unfamiliar, and unfamiliar doesn't always feel safe. There's also a quiet grief that follows people who grew up too fast. Not dramatic grief, invisible grief. Grief for not being protected, grief for not being carefree, grief for not being allowed to be small. They may feel older than their peers, emotionally tired without knowing why, disconnected even in rooms full of people. This grief often shows up as chronic anxiety, guilt when resting, or a sense of emptiness after helping everyone else. This isn't weakness, it's unprocessed loss. What's important to understand is that the survival strategy worked. Growing up too fast kept them alive. It helped them navigate chaos. It made them capable, resilient, and strong. There's nothing wrong with the child who adapted this way, but what protected them then can limit them now. The nervous system that learned to stay alert no longer needs to live in constant readiness. Healing doesn't mean becoming careless or irresponsible. It means learning what was never taught. Learning that rest doesn't need to be earned, that needs don't make you a burden, that love doesn't require usefulness. Healing looks like allowing support without guilt, naming needs without apologizing, and grieving the childhood that was skipped. And that grief matters, because you can't release what you never acknowledge. A child who grew up too fast didn't become strong by choice. They became strong because someone had to be. But adulthood doesn't have to be another survival phase. You're allowed to rest now. You're allowed to receive. You're allowed to be human. Growing up too fast kept you alive. Healing is what finally lets you live.